Alright, welcome back to Vintage Movie Reviews. I am George, and today we are looking at the king of monsters. That's right, Godzilla. He's one of the best there ever was in the monster movie world, and we're going to take a look at him today. So let me ask you first, while we are getting started, what was your exposure to Godzilla? Because the first movie came out in 1954, and we've had a string of them ever since, and there's been many different incarnations of them. We'll talk a little bit about that. But what was your first exposure to Godzilla? For me, I was watching like Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon matinee movies on local TV channels. And a lot of times when I was a kid, they would play these Godzilla movies that were made in like the 70s or 80s, around that era. And they were fun. It was the technique they used was to have English speakers dub in for the Japanese voices, so the lips would be moving differently than the dialogue was, and you didn't really care about that because it was really all about Godzilla and him running around and getting into fights and doing his thing and breathing his fire and the rubber suits. That was a thing at that time. They were very obvious that it was a guy walking around in a rubber suit, but it didn't matter. It was just a lot of fun. And if there was a Godzilla movie on a day when I had a free afternoon or free time on a weekend, I was watching that movie. So that was my exposure to Godzilla, but I'm curious as to what your exposure to Godzilla would be. This has gone on for many years. Again, the first movie was 1954, and there were a lot of incarnations of it since then. So what I'd like to do is just read through a list of the different titles of Godzilla movies, starting with the first. And I'll probably mess up some of these names, but that's okay. But just to point out how many of these there are and how many incarnations there are. So there was Godzilla, Godzilla Raids Again, King Kong vs. Godzilla, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, Invasion of the Astro Monster, Ibra, Horror of the Deep, Son of Godzilla, Destroy All Monsters Attack, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, Godzilla vs. Gigan, Godzilla vs. Megalodon, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, Terror of Mechagodzilla, The Return of Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Bionate, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, Godzilla vs. Mothra, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I have not seen that one, but I will have to look that up. That sounds awesome. Godzilla vs. Destroya. It's really spelled Destroya. I love that title. And then we got a little bit more of a modern area. We got Godzilla 2000 Millennium, Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack. How great is that title? So cool. Then we got Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, Godzilla Tokyo SOS, Godzilla Final Wars, Shin Godzilla, Godzilla Planet of the Monsters, Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle, and Godzilla Planet Eater. And those are the Japanese versions, and of course we've had some Americanized versions. We had Godzilla King of the Monsters 1956, King Kong vs. Godzilla 1963, Godzilla 1976, Godzilla 1985, Godzilla 1998, Godzilla 2014, and then of course the most recent one, Godzilla King of the Monsters, and then there's an upcoming one according to the internet here, Godzilla vs. Kong. So we're going to do another Kong vs. Godzilla. So, what a list. I mean, come on. And that's just counting the films. There's been video games, there's been cartoons, there's been a plethora of merchandise over the years. This is a big franchise. There is more going on here than like James Bond even. It is something that's been in the pop culture for a long time. But of course, this being vintage movie reviews, I would really like to take a little bit of time to talk mostly about the original, the 1954 Godzilla, the Toho Studios' first incarnation of it. It is a really good film. Now, a thing about that, they again, like I said before, they made the Americanized version in 1956, and to me, I always thought that was the first Godzilla movie. And I didn't realize, even until recently, that that was just a kind of reworking of the original 1954 Japanese Godzilla. and they are two totally different films, really. What happened was the Japanese version came out, and it was well received in over there, and then they brought it to America, but they couldn't just show that version. They didn't want to do subtitles, they didn't want to do dubbing. So what they did was they got Raymond Burr, who played Perry Mason, and he's famous for that, and they spliced him in to footage from the original Japanese version, and they gave him dialogue, and he did a lot of voiceovers and things like that, and it was a way to introduce an Americanized Western character into the film. But by doing that, they really cut out a lot of the subtext and a lot of the interesting things and a lot of the characterization that made the original 1954 version really interesting. And you know what they were doing with the 1954 version was they were using the sci-fi fantasy to kind of shine a light on the cultural times, which is something we've talked about on the show often, and how these films reflect the times they were made in. So when they were making their version of it, Godzilla is becoming, in a sense, a walking atom bomb, and he is a parallel for that. And when they did the Americanized version 1956, they really removed a lot of the subtext that was put in the original, and you don't get that unless you watch the original. Now, I was doing a little bit of digging, and I'm not 100% sure if this is true, but from what I found, it looks like the original Japanese version wasn't available to watch over here until 2004. I didn't realize that, but think about that. We've only had about 15 years to actually experience that original version. And before then, only the 1956 reworked version was available. So I think it's fascinating to go back and to watch the original one, read the subtitles, and what you get are the characters that were intended to carry the story. They are human characters that got their own hopes and dreams, and there's a scientist, and there's a politician, and there's an everyday person, and we're supposed to watch their experience of seeing Godzilla first in shadows doing things and being a threat, and then finally culminating with it going around Tokyo and basically destroying lots of Tokyo before they figure out a way to kill it. And of course, Godzilla's not going to stay down for long. He's going to come back in 30, 40 plus other films. But that is an actual human drama story that the original gives us, that I think a lot of that is lost in the translation when we got to the 1956 version, which again was what I thought was the original version for a long time, because that's what I had seen on TV growing up. And it's fascinating to me to watch the original. So I suggest that if you get a chance, watch the 1954 Toho Productions original Japanese version of Godzilla. And it will make you want to go back and watch more of these cool titles I just read off, because it's good. There's drama there. It's not just about a giant dinosaur walking around destroying Tokyo. There's a little bit more to it. There's more heart. There are characters that actually say things like, I survived Hiroshima, now look at this. And like I said, none of that, they cut all that out of the American stuff. And so we're getting a different perspective when we watch that version, so I definitely recommend it. Again, this week we took a look at Godzilla, especially the 1954 original Japanese Godzilla. Check that out. It was a great movie. And we will be doing some more videos soon on some more classic films. I appreciate you taking the time to jump in and listen to me talk about it. I enjoy these films. I hope you do too. And until the next time, have a good one.